And if you think that's weird, just wait. Because the deeper you dive into the world of the narwhal, the more you realize that almost nothing about this creature is quite what it seems. So, what if I told you that the narwhal's tusk isn't actually a tusk at all? And what if I then said that it's also one of the most sensitive organs known to science, capable of detecting changes in its environment so subtle we can barely even imagine them? Yeah, buckle up, because we're about to explore the bizarre and beautiful life of the narwhal, a creature so unique it practically defies explanation. We're going to uncover the secrets hidden within that iconic spiral, the mysteries of their Arctic home, and the surprising adaptations that make them one of the most extraordinary animals on the planet. Forget everything you thought you knew about this, quote, zero, because the truth is far more fascinating and far stranger than any fairy tale. Let's start with the obvious, that incredible horn. I mean, it's the first thing anyone notices, right? It's what makes the narwhal instantly recognizable, a symbol of the Arctic, a creature ripped straight from legend. For centuries, people believed these tusks possessed magical properties, capable of neutralizing poisons and curing diseases. They were prized possessions, worth more than their weight in gold, adorning royal collections and fueling fantastical stories. But the reality of the narwhal's tusk is far more grounded in science, and yet, somehow, even more amazing. First off, let's ditch the word tusk altogether, because technically, it's not one. It's actually an elongated tooth, specifically the narwhal's left canine tooth, which in males grows right through the upper lip, spiraling outwards in a counterclockwise direction. Now, most mammals have teeth covered in enamel, a super hard protective layer. But the narwhal's tusk lacks this enamel coating. Instead, it's covered in cementum, a softer, more porous material. This might seem like a design flaw, but it's actually key to the tusk's incredible sensory abilities, which we'll get to in a minute. And here's where it gets even weirder. While almost all male narwhals have this impressive spiral appendage, only about 15% of females do, and even then, their tusks are typically much shorter and less pronounced. Scientists aren't entirely sure why some females develop tusks and others don't, but it likely has to do with genetics and hormonal factors. But wait, there's more. Occasionally, a narwhal will develop two tusks. That's right. Both canine teeth decide to go rogue and spiral outwards, giving the poor creature a truly unicorn-esque appearance. These double-tusked narwhals are incredibly rare, and they're often considered to be particularly lucky or special within their pods. Imagine the dental bills. So we know what it is, but what does it do? For years, scientists debated the purpose of the narwhal's tusk. Was it a weapon for fighting off predators? A tool for breaking through ice? A status symbol for attracting mates? The answer, it turns out, is a little bit of everything and a whole lot more. Early theories suggested the tusk was primarily used for male-on-male combat, a way for males to establish dominance and compete for mating rights. And there's certainly some evidence to support this. Narwhals have been observed tusking each other, engaging in playful sparring matches that likely serve to establish a social hierarchy. These encounters are rarely violent, though, and the tusks don't appear to be particularly effective weapons. They're relatively brittle and prone to breakage, so a serious fight could easily result in a damaged or even broken tusk, which would be a major disadvantage. Another popular theory was that the tusk was used to break through ice, allowing narwhals to access breathing holes in the frozen Arctic landscape. And while narwhals do live in some of the iciest waters on Earth, they don't actually use their tusks to smash through the ice. Instead, they rely on their strong bodies and powerful tails to create and maintain breathing holes. Plus, if you think about it, using a sensitive sensory organ to bash through ice seems like a pretty bad idea. you'd be constantly risking damage and potentially compromising its delicate sensory capabilities. So, if it's not primarily for fighting or ice breaking, what's the deal with the tusk? Well, in the early 2000s, a team of researchers led by Dr. Martin Nguyen made a groundbreaking discovery that completely changed our understanding of the narwhal's tusk. They found that the tusk is actually a highly sensitive sensory organ, capable of detecting changes in water temperature, salinity, and even the presence of predators. Remember that cementum coating we talked about earlier? It's not just a protective layer. It's actually riddled with millions of tiny pores that connect directly to the narwhal's nervous system. These pores allow the narwhal to sense subtle changes in its environment, providing it with a wealth of information about its surroundings. Think of it like this: the narwhal's tusk is essentially a giant antenna, constantly scanning the water for clues. It can detect changes in water temperature that are as small as 0.001 degrees Celsius, allowing it to find pockets of warmer water where fish and other prey are likely to congregate. It can also sense changes in salinity, which can indicate the presence of melting ice or freshwater runoff. And it can even detect the presence of predators, such as killer whales, by sensing changes in the water's chemical composition. This sensory ability is particularly important in the Arctic, where the environment is constantly changing and visibility is often limited. The narwhal's tusk allows it to navigate the icy waters with incredible precision, find food, avoid predators, and even communicate with other narwhals. But here's where it gets even more mind-blowing. Scientists believe that the narwhal can actually use its tusk to taste the water, detecting the presence of different chemicals and hormones. This could allow them to find mates, locate breeding grounds, and even assess the health of other narwhals in their pod. Imagine having a giant tooth that can tell you everything you need to know about the world around you. It's like having a built-in superpower, and the story doesn't end there. Recent research suggests that the narwhal can also control the flow of water into and out of the pores in its tusk, allowing it to fine-tune its sensory abilities. They can essentially open and close the pores, adjusting the sensitivity of the tusk depending on the situation. This is an incredibly sophisticated adaptation, and it's just one more example of how the narwhal has evolved to thrive in the harsh Arctic environment. So the tusk is a sensory organ, a communication tool, and possibly even a way to find mates. But it's also a fragile and vulnerable appendage. Narwhals are known to break their tusks from time to time, usually as a result of accidental collisions with ice or rocks. And while a broken tusk isn't necessarily fatal, it can certainly make life more difficult. It can impair their ability to sense their environment, find food, and communicate with other narwhals. And that's just the tusk. The rest of the narwhal's body is equally adapted to survive in the frigid Arctic waters. They have a thick layer of blubber to insulate them from the cold, and their streamlined bodies allow them to swim with incredible speed and agility. They can dive to depths of over 1,500 meters, holding their breath for up to 25 minutes at a time. They are true masters of the Arctic Ocean, perfectly adapted to thrive in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. But even these incredible adaptations aren't enough to protect them from the growing threats of climate change and human activity. As the Arctic ice melts, narwhals are losing their habitat and their food sources are becoming increasingly scarce. They are also facing increased competition from other marine mammals, such as killer whales, which are moving further north as the waters warm. And they are vulnerable to entanglement in fishing gear, ship strikes, and the effects of pollution. The narwhal is a true Arctic icon, a symbol of the beauty and resilience of the natural world. But it's also a reminder of the fragility of the Arctic ecosystem and the urgent need to protect it. We need to understand these creatures better to appreciate their unique adaptations and to take action to ensure their survival, because the loss of the narwhal would be a devastating blow, not just to the Arctic, but to the planet as a whole. Now, before we get all doom and gloom, let's circle back to something truly bizarre about these unicorns of the sea. Their tusks. I mean, we've established it's technically a tooth, but let's be honest. Tooth just doesn't capture the sheer majesty of that spiraled ivory spear. And the question of why they have them, well, that's been baffling scientists for centuries. For a long time, the prevailing theory was pretty straightforward. Weapon. Makes sense, right? Big pointy thing, must be for stabbing. Maybe they used it to fight over mates, like stags locking antlers. Maybe they used it to fend off predators, like polar bears or killer whales. The problem? The evidence just didn't stack up. For one thing, narwhals, despite their impressive tusks, aren't particularly aggressive creatures. They're actually quite shy and retiring, preferring to avoid conflict whenever possible. And while a tusk might deter a smaller predator, it's not exactly going to stop a determined polar bear. Plus, and this is a big plus, only males usually have tusks. And even then, about 15% of males never develop one. And even rarer, some females actually do grow a tusk. So, if it's a weapon for fighting over mates, why don't all the males have one? And why would any females need one? The whole thing just didn't quite add up. Then there's the fact that these tusks are incredibly sensitive. I mean, ridiculously, mind-blowingly sensitive. We're talking about millions of nerve endings running through the tusk, connecting directly to the narwhal's brain. This led scientists to a completely different theory, that the tusk is actually a sensory organ. Think of it like this. The narwhal is swimming through the dark, murky waters of the Arctic, and it needs to be able to sense its environment. It can't rely on sight, because there's barely any light. It can't rely on sound alone, because sound travels differently in water. So, it uses its tusk to detect changes in water temperature, salinity, and even the presence of prey. Imagine being able to taste the water around you, to know exactly where the fish are hiding, just by sensing the subtle changes in the water chemistry. That's essentially what the narwhal's tusk allows it to do. It's like having a superpowered, multisensory antenna sticking out of your head. And the evidence for this sensory theory is pretty compelling. Studies have shown that narwhals can detect changes in salinity with their tusks, and that they use their tusks to probe the seabed for food. They've even been observed using their tusks to tap on ice, possibly to create small openings for breathing. But even this theory isn't perfect. There are still a lot of unanswered questions about the narwhal's tusk. For example, why is it spiraled? What's the purpose of the grooves and ridges on the surface of the tusk? And why do some narwhals have two tusks while others have none? The truth is, we still don't fully understand the function of the narwhal's tusk. It's likely that it serves multiple purposes, acting as both a sensory organ and a display of dominance. But one thing is certain, it's one of the most unique and fascinating adaptations in the animal kingdom. And speaking of unique adaptations, let's talk about the narwhal's diet. These creatures are incredibly picky eaters. I mean, seriously, they make toddlers look like adventurous gourmands. They primarily feed on Greenland halibut, Arctic cod, squid, and shrimp, and they have a very specific way of catching their prey. Instead of actively hunting, narwhals tend to ambush their prey. They'll lie in wait near the seabed or under ice floes and then suddenly lunge at unsuspecting fish or squid. They use suction feeding to suck their prey into their mouths, and they swallow it whole. But here's the thing, narwhals don't have teeth. At least, not in the traditional sense. They have a few vestigial teeth in their upper jaw, but these teeth never erupt. So how do they eat? Well, that's another narwhal mystery. Some scientists believe that narwhals use their tusks to stun their prey before swallowing it. Others think that they simply rely on suction feeding to suck their prey into their mouths and then swallow it whole. It's also possible that they use their tongues to manipulate their prey and to help them swallow it more easily. Whatever the method, it seems to work. Narwhals are able to survive and thrive in the harsh Arctic environment, despite their limited diet and their lack of teeth. But their picky eating habits do make them vulnerable to changes in the Arctic ecosystem. If their preferred prey becomes scarce due to climate change or overfishing, narwhals could face serious challenges. And that brings us back to the big picture. The future of the narwhal. These incredible creatures are facing a number of threats, from climate change and pollution to hunting and habitat loss. And if we don't take action to protect them, we could lose them forever. But there's still hope. By understanding these creatures better, by appreciating their unique adaptations, and by taking action to protect their habitat, we can ensure that narwhals continue to thrive in the Arctic for generations to come. We can choose to be the heroes of their story, not the villains. And that's a choice worth making. So, what can we actually do? Well, let's break it down. Climate change is a massive global problem and it can feel overwhelming, but even small changes in our daily lives can make a difference. Reducing our carbon footprint by driving less, using less energy, and supporting sustainable businesses can all contribute to a healthier planet. Consider carpooling, using public transport, or even biking to work or school when possible. Switch to energy-efficient light bulbs and appliances. Unplug electronics when you're not using them. These seemingly small actions add up when millions of people participate. Beyond individual actions, we need to support policies that address climate change and protect the Arctic environment. This means voting for politicians who prioritize environmental protection, advocating for stronger regulations on pollution, and supporting organizations that are working to combat climate change. Speak up. Write letters to your elected officials. Participate in peaceful protests and make your voice heard. Collective action is crucial to creating meaningful change. Pollution is another major threat to narwhals. Plastic pollution, in particular, is a huge problem in the oceans. Narwhals can ingest plastic, which can lead to starvation and death. We can all help reduce plastic pollution by using reusable bags, water bottles, and containers. Avoid single-use plastics whenever possible. Participate in local cleanups to remove plastic from beaches and waterways. Support businesses that are committed to reducing their plastic footprint. Sustainable fishing practices are also essential for protecting narwhals. Overfishing can deplete the food sources that narwhals rely on, and entanglement in fishing gear can be deadly. Support fisheries that are managed sustainably and avoid buying seafood that is caught using destructive methods. Look for certifications like the Marine Stewardship Council (MSC) label to ensure that the seafood you're buying is sustainable. Hunting of narwhals is another controversial issue. In some Inuit communities, narwhal hunting is a traditional practice that is essential for food security and cultural survival. However, hunting must be managed sustainably to ensure that narwhal populations are not overexploited. Support research and monitoring efforts to assess narwhal populations and ensure that hunting quotas are set at sustainable levels. Work with Inuit communities to develop sustainable hunting practices that respect both the needs of the people and the well-being of the narwhals. Habitat loss is also a growing concern. As the Arctic warms, sea ice melts, opening up new areas to shipping and resource extraction. This increased activity can disrupt narwhal migration routes, increase the risk of ship strikes, and introduce pollutants into their environment. So advocate for policies that protect critical narwhal habitats from development and pollution. Support the establishment of marine protected areas in key narwhal habitats to limit human activities and safeguard their breeding and feeding grounds. Reduce your carbon footprint to slow down the rate of Arctic warming and protect the sea ice that narwhals depend on. And then, There's the issue of pollution. Industrial activities and oil spills can release toxins into the Arctic ecosystem, contaminating the food chain and harming narwhals. Support regulations that prevent pollution from industrial activities and oil spills in the Arctic. Advocate for the development and use of cleaner energy sources to reduce the risk of pollution. Participate in cleanup efforts to remove plastic and other debris from Arctic waters. But perhaps the most important thing we can do is to educate ourselves and others about the plight of the narwhal. The more people who understand the challenges facing these amazing creatures, the more likely we are to take action to protect them. Share information about narwhals and the threats they face with your friends, family, and community. Support organizations that are working to protect narwhals and their habitat. Raise awareness about the importance of the Arctic ecosystem and the need to protect it for future generations. Because when you really think about it, the narwhal is more than just a quirky creature with a spiral tusk. It's a symbol of the Arctic, a reminder of the delicate balance of nature, and a call to action to protect our planet. It is a sentinel, a harbinger of things to come. If the narwhal thrives, the Arctic thrives. If the Arctic thrives, the world has a fighting chance. But if the narwhal disappears, well, let's just say that's a future none of us want to contemplate. So, let's get back to that tusk, shall we? We talked about its sensory capabilities, its role in social signaling, and even its potential as a weapon. But there's one more fascinating aspect of the narwhal's tusk that we haven't explored yet: its potential to unlock the secrets of the Arctic. You see, the tusk is made of dentin, a hard tissue that grows in layers, much like the rings of a tree. And just like tree rings, the layers of the tusk can provide a record of the narwhal's life, including its age, its diet, and the environmental conditions it has experienced. By analyzing the chemical composition of the tusk, scientists can learn about the levels of pollutants in the narwhal's environment, the changes in sea ice cover, and the impact of climate change on the Arctic ecosystem. In essence, the narwhal's tusk is a living archive, a treasure trove of information that can help us understand the past, present, and future of the Arctic. It's a tool that can help us monitor the health of the Arctic ecosystem, track the impacts of climate change, and develop strategies to protect narwhals and their habitats. But here's the catch. To unlock the secrets of the tusk, we need to study it carefully and responsibly. We need to collect samples in a way that doesn't harm the narwhals, and we need to analyze the data in a way that is both accurate and ethical. This requires collaboration between scientists, Inuit communities, and other stakeholders. It requires a commitment to research that is both rigorous and respectful. And that brings us back to the bigger picture: the need to protect the Arctic and its inhabitants. The narwhal is just one species in a complex ecosystem, and its fate is intertwined with the fate of the entire region. To protect the narwhal, we need to protect the Arctic. To protect the Arctic, we need to address climate change, reduce pollution, and manage human activities in a sustainable way. It's a daunting challenge, but it's not an impossible one. We have the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to make a difference. What we need now is the will to act. We need to recognize that the fate of the narwhal is not just a matter of scientific curiosity or environmental concern. It's a matter of moral responsibility. We have a duty to protect these amazing creatures, not just for their own sake, but for the sake of future generations. And so, the next time you see a picture of a narwhal, take a moment to appreciate its beauty, its uniqueness, and its resilience. Remember that it is a symbol of the Arctic, a reminder of the delicate balance of nature, and a call to action to protect our planet. And remember that even the smallest actions can make a difference. By reducing our carbon footprint, supporting sustainable hunting practices, and raising awareness about the plight of the narwhal, we can all contribute to a brighter future for these unicorns of the sea. And that is why nothing about the narwhal is normal. It's extraordinary. It's a symbol. It's a responsibility. And it's a creature worth fighting for. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Comment what you want to hear next. But the story doesn't end there. The narwhal's unique tusk also plays a crucial role in their social lives. Scientists have observed narwhals using their tusks to communicate with each other, engaging in what's been dubbed tusking. Imagine two narwhals gently rubbing their tusks together, almost like a secret handshake or a gentle greeting. What are they saying? Are they exchanging information about the best feeding grounds? Are they reinforcing social bonds within the pod? The exact purpose of tusking remains a mystery, but it's clear that it's an important part of their social interactions. Dr. Marianne Marcoux, a leading marine biologist who has spent years studying narwhals in the Arctic, shared a fascinating anecdote with me during an interview. "I remember one particular day," she said, her eyes twinkling with the memory. "We were observing a pod of narwhals near Bylot Island. The water was unusually clear, and we could see them quite clearly from our research vessel. Suddenly, two adult males began tusking. It wasn't aggressive at all. It was almost tender. They rubbed their tusks together for several minutes, then separated and rejoined the pod. It was a truly remarkable sight. It made me realize just how complex and nuanced their social lives are. The narwhal's diet is also far from ordinary. These creatures are selective eaters, primarily feeding on Greenland halibut, Arctic cod, shrimp, and squid. But what's truly fascinating is how they hunt these elusive prey in the dark depths of the Arctic Ocean. Narwhals are deep divers, capable of plunging to depths of over 5,000 feet in search of food. That's deeper than most submarines can go, and they can hold their breath for up to 25 minutes at a time. Imagine the physiological adaptations required to survive in such extreme conditions. To navigate in the darkness and locate their prey, narwhals rely on echolocation, a sophisticated sonar system. They emit a series of clicks and then listen for the echoes that bounce back from objects in their environment. By analyzing these echoes, they can determine the size, shape, and location of their prey, even in complete darkness. It's like having a built-in radar system. The precision of their echolocation is astounding, explained Dr. Marcoux. They can differentiate between different species of fish, even at great distances. It's like they have a mental map of the underwater world.